Today, we're going to dive into a topic that shapes the trajectory of entire lifetimes: how we learn to make, save, and enjoy money in our 20s and 30s, and how we form partnerships grounded in healthy financial values. Oh my gosh, such an exciting topic. My guest is Paul Lermitte. He is an educator, an author, an intergenerational money mentor who has helped thousands of people of all ages build wealth with intention and clarity. In this conversation, Paul shares his practical steps, timeless principles, and real stories that will help young adults build not just financial security, but financial freedom with purpose. And in the surveys that I do with my clients pre-meeting these days, this is one of the hottest topics, is making sure that their kids make great financial decisions. Paul Lermitte is dedicated to teaching people how to build strong, healthy relationships with money. Over the past 3 decades, he has guided families, young adults, and business leaders to master the fundamentals of earning, saving, and sharing wealth while aligning their financial lives with their values. He's known for his practical, story-rich teaching style that makes money concepts simple and actionable. He believes wealth building is not just about financial literacy, but about financial communication, mindset, and one of my favorite concepts, intentional design. His work empowers young men and women to create sustainable wealth and form partnerships grounded in clarity, trust, and shared values, not to mention the fact that he's been one of my most valued brothers and mentors in the wealth management business for a very long time. We won't say quite how long, always greeting me with the biggest energy and even bigger ideas. Paul Lermitte, welcome to the Flourish Feed podcast.
Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much, Jillian. It's going to be one of my favorite subjects.
Yes.
These young people, so critical today in society and for themselves. There's so much going on in the world. So we need to actually mentor, train, and in essence, coach for those 20s and 30s. Because from then on, they'll take it. But we need these 20 and 30-year-olds to be really focused.
You're absolutely right. And I want to make a note here, and I'll put it in the show notes as well. We're going to use the word decisions an awful lot today, not just because we're talking about the book, which is, it's been around for quite a while, 25 years. It's in its 25th year, which is phenomenal. Decisions, dollars and cents, helping you navigate your financial future. And this book, you have many books that you've written. This one specifically focuses on that age group. You've spent decades teaching people of all ages how to build wealth, but tell me a little bit more why this period of time in the 20s and 30s is such a crucial period.
So we are really so focused on these 20-year-olds because we want them to get grounded. There's so much distraction out there, and I'm going to call it the Instagram world. And where we want these young people to do is, one, we want them to get educated. We want them to actually get into relationships early. And we're actually, some of the people are, and my middle son at 38 just got engaged. Now we're excited.
Congratulations.
That is, in some ways, I'd rather if it was in the early 30s. But this is the difference in the generations that we're seeing. But one of the things, again, that we have to think about is, yes, this whole decision making. And in their 20s, they're setting up. And I'm going to suggest, again, the same son, he was meandering, and we literally kicked him out of the house at age 25.
Really?
We had a rule, and it's in the book. Parents, you need to have your kids leave the nest at 25. And we did actually do that. And, well, he was 25 and 2 months, we'll tell you that. So what happened is it actually launched his career because mom and dad made him actually go out on his own. He had to go and get a roommate. He had to work harder, 2 jobs to substantiate. And this was in the film industry. And today he's with Epic Games. He's doing very well in that situation. But here's the thing. It really is about the decisions that he had to work through. So sometimes that hard work, sometimes that getting uncomfortable, that's what we want in the 20s.
I love that because it fits right into this concept of flow, which I'm a massive proponent of, and I practice it in my high flow lifestyle, but it's also something that I teach. And an essential ingredient to getting into flow is you must first embrace struggle. And
Right.
how can you embrace struggle in the safety of the place where you've grown up? I think what you're pointing out is that getting out there and having to start making decisions, but also forming relationships that allow you to reach some kind of flow state in your wealth building life. So when we first started talking about the story of Patrick, which is the son I think we're talking about, you said there was a story to do with $25. Is that what it was?
Right.
What is that story about? Does it have to do with struggle, or is it more about like essential decision making around money, or both?
Well, it was, I think, a mindset that we believe in family wealth is to get the young people also thinking about themselves, of course, in their 20s and 30s. That's what they're thinking about, but also to think about others and putting, in some ways, others before themselves that maybe aren't at a stage or wealth or lifestyle that they are. So we just encouraged our sons to start giving $25 to a charity. That's what, again, Patrick, he actually took it on, and he's been doing that ever since. And I believe that that small little nugget changed, again, his trajectory. He now thinks about other people that are less fortunate. And thus, when you're thinking about that, guess what you're thinking? How fortunate you are.
Grateful, yes.
Great decisions, grateful, thinking about your future. These are the important little nuggets that can change people's trajectory.
So when you're talking about the $25 story and you're talking about teaching someone to think outside themselves, is there a particular age around that you advise? Is that a more of a younger person before the ages of 20 and 30? Is 20 and 30 when we have to hit the flow state by taking on struggle? Where does the gratitude piece fit in your opinion?
Well, if parents, and so this is the parental side, and most of us haven't been trained extensively in that, as we haven't, as parents, been trained in wealth management. And so that's when, as you know, when I was a financial planner, and then I had a 6-year-old, my eldest, and it was like, well, how do I train my son to be, in essence, a good money manager in the future? That's where I went through that investigation and discovery of writing that book. So kids can learn that. And one of the things, we're doing this with our grandsons right now. So we just sold a little property. We've got a little profit. We've told the boys about this, and we're then saying, okay, here's what your mom and dad are going to be given, and they can direct that money. Here, we're going to give you $100, and we want you to tell us, where do you want to put that? We actually did that with our sons when they were in teens, and we gave them $500 at that time. And we said, which one do you want? Now, here's an example again that's so interesting. The youngest son said the SPCA, because we had dogs and that kind of stuff, natural. Then again, here comes the middle son, and he goes, well, I'm going to put it into breast cancer. And all of his sons, of course, or his brothers, they're laughing at the dinner table, thinking, why? But his friend, her mother, was fighting cancer. Oh, wow. And so that was a whole conversation that really entered into the whole family and that kind of stuff. So again, these little acts, these little things that can change how we think about actually our community and about ourselves and about our careers and our life.
I love this because what it reminds me is something that I was thinking about, I think it was last week, which is that money, being such a powerful medium, is both a flow trigger and a flow blocker. If you let it, it can stop you from your own evolution. But if you let it, it can also trigger incredible leaps and bounds in terms of your own development. What I like about your use of the money in those circumstances is that you used it as a little trigger to get to know people. You used it as a way of helping them articulate something that was deep. Was there an approach to your setting, to the time of day, because you said it was around the dinner table, right? So that's kind of a bit of a formal moment. Tell me about the setup of that, because that sounds incredibly intentional.
So again, I was given guidance by others who have done this many times, and they actually did say that the dinner table was a good time frame and not Thanksgiving or anything like that. But we do use Thanksgiving as a very targeted time for passing wealth along and talking about this giving. So Thanksgiving is a really critical time when we pass money between generations. But to answer that question, it really is just a time where people are together. And that's the important thing. And when there's less distraction. So the evening sometimes is the best versus a Saturday morning, everybody wants to get going.
Yes, no kidding. And you have 3 sons. You learned about the SPCA, you learned about breast cancer. What did you learn about the third son in this instance where you asked them to do something with $500?
Well, that eldest, he decided that he wanted to make sure that it was going towards one of the local charities that was in sports. So it was a sports group that he thought it should be. Again, where that eldest son has gone, I'll say he was resistant during those high school. Like he wanted the money for himself. He wanted the money to do his things. But here he is at 40, and he is now a very charitable-minded person, very much involved in the community, very much in actually coaching young entrepreneurs, actually.
Really?
So really giving back. So yeah, he went through a phase, as some of us do, where it's like, it's all about me. Mm-hmm. But then, that little seed does start to grow.
Marvelous. Yes. I want to come back to the 20s and 30s because there's some really important groundwork we need to lay here about how, right? So for someone just starting their career, they might be in their 20s. Let's start with 20s because I know we keep bundling those 2 decades together, but it sounds like maybe there's a reason to tease it out a little bit. But somebody who's just starting their career, they've finished university, they have their first or maybe their second really important job. What's the most powerful financial habit they could build right away?
Okay, so this is a deep and multi, question answer situation. But I think the first thing is, in essence, I would hope have bank accounts at that time. They probably have a credit card at that time. They have a cell phone at that time. So all these things are factors that are, I'll call it expenses. They probably maybe have traveled or they want to travel, which is a big cost these days and that kind of stuff. So again, what we want to say to the 20-year-olds and like those that are going through community colleges, university, or going right into, a career and they're making money right off the bat. And I'm going to say to them, they have to be very diligent, and all of these kids at this time have to be diligent at making sure that they save money, they invest money, and they put so much into the expenses. And with the credit card, here's the biggest thing. We're going to talk about non-flow, anti-flow, things that work against you, is debt. Mm. There's good debt, but there's bad debt. And most of it in the 20s, you're going to get into the bad debt, which is credit cards and cars. So car loans, again, we want to say to you, buy something old, something that's with like $10,000. Mm-hmm. We don't need to be into that $40,000, $50,000 car loan for the next 7-8 years. Are you kidding me? That is crazy. You just want something simple. So you've got to travel, yes, but you've got to not do that on your credit card. You have to have that in your savings account. Mm. So we use electronics. Tangerine, one of the best little accounts out there. It's automated right from your bank account every month. Just like you can do this with a charity. $25 goes to the SPCA or whichever organization. And thus, there goes $100 right to your Tangerine account. These are the important things to start.
Okay, so debt, consumer debt particularly, and auto debt, we want to stay away from that. A, because, all it is it's a kind of a record of something you've already done and now you're carrying that baggage with you. And B, I think the other thing with the car is you've got so many decades ahead of you for the fancy car. How about we just get from A to B and not have to carry that extra expense? Because reallocating that expense towards this, I think you're suggesting that we have project bank accounts. We have project-driven bank accounts. So we have an automatic savings to our travel account so that then when we go travel, we've literally earned the right to go. We're not going on tomorrow. We're going on what we did yesterday.
Beautifully put. That's because, there's those of course, advertisements, you deserve a vacation.
Right.
No, you don't deserve a vacation. You have to work. You're going to have vacations for the rest of your life. No, you have to get to work and save and make sure that you stay financially sound.
Yes.
So that you, in essence, can travel for the rest of your life. But if you start getting into this debt spiral, it becomes so negative, anti-flow, like it's so hard.
Absolutely, it's so hard. And we're saving now towards something that's a short-term goal, like going on a trip, but at the same point in time, are we beginning the mental process of understanding the power of compounding, of starting to save for the long term now as well? Or what age do you launch that at people?
So again, today we have RSPs, TFSAs, the tax-free savings, and we also have the home buyers, the home
Right.
savings plan. So there's 8,000 there, there's 6,000 in the tax-free, and the RSPs, well, you got up to $21,000 or 20-some thousand, which again, for in the 20s, that's crazy. Taking a little bit, like the RSPs, if you're making enough money, it's a good, again, long-term savings, set $50, $100, whatever it is, but start it. If it's $25, start it in your 20s. And just never stop, just keep it going forever. Like what you're going to try to do is set this foundation of savings, investing, so that in essence, it's just going to increase. As you see the numbers grow, you're going to get more excited in your 30s, and then you're going to go, hey, I can actually double up that payment. One, maybe because I'm making more money. So these are the kinds of things that you want to accrue. And again, maybe you're looking for an apartment, a 2-bedroom, 2-bath. Those are the minimums that we like, 2. One, because then you could be in one room and you could rent out the other to your friend.
Right.
Who's maybe not being as savvy as you have been.
Okay, so we have savings, we have this beautiful power of compounding as part of the foundation. Can you think of a real life story where consistent habits created big results over time in any of the people that you've coached? I mean, you've been doing this for quite a while. Tell us a little bit about those. I think you've done boot camps for a very long time when it comes to teaching young people and people in their 20s and 30s. Have you seen any really cool stories come out of that?
Well, I'm going to say that, when people say, young people say, and it's on Instagram, oh, you're never going to own a house. That is bull. I won't say the other word, but I'll say that's bull.
You can say it. It's our podcast. You can do it.
Bullshit. Every young person, your grandfather did it, and it was very hard for them. They made very little money. Your parents, yeah, they were in a pretty good spot, but yes, they actually still had to work hard. My parents had to buy houses and fix them up before they actually owned a nice house. So that's the same for us. We had a small little house, the smallest on the cul-de-sac, but we were able to buy it. And it scared the heck out of us. Everybody's scared when they're going to buy something. So yes, maybe it's changed a little bit. Maybe you're not going to have the house. Maybe you're only going to get a townhouse.
Mm-hmm.
Or maybe you're going to get a condominium. There's nothing wrong with a 2-bedroom, 2-bath in a nice location close to work. Those are good investments. There's the good debt too. When we talk about debt, that's an appreciating asset. And that's a debt that is good with that asset versus a car. A car debt is a depreciating asset.
It lowers in value over time. Exactly. That's a really important distinction to make for people, because I think generally if you are debt averse, you come at all forms of debt and think that it's negative. But the distinction is that if the debt is against something that is growing in value, then you have the potential of making money over time. Whereas if you are owning debt that is against something that is reducing in value, we really want to try and avoid that. I want to talk a little bit about what you referred to a couple of times as the Instagram kind of culture, something I like to refer to as the algorithm, right? We're always trying to be louder than the algorithm, because the algorithm is telling people things that are not necessarily sound or healthy or true. And so the Paul Lermitte algorithm, if there was one, if we could make it as loud and voluminous as possible, it would say what about financial resilience? It would say, what's the definition of financial resilience in the Paul Lermitte algorithm?
you have cash savings investments, and you, in essence, have zero credit card debt, zero car debt. You might have a house debt, but that's different. No personal debt, no travel debt. No, you can't do that either. Okay? But you have assets, and that's power. And if you want to talk about mental health, that really is a positive thing. When you see these savings always there and those investments growing year after year after year, and again, on the investment side, and good old Jillian will be able to bring a great guest in to tell you, stick to the program. Don't deviate, and don't think you're smarter than the market, and don't think these other people are smarter than the market. That's all the people that lose all their money.
Yeah, absolutely. Consistency over perfection. And every single small move that you make in the right direction is going to compound on itself. Okay, now I want to shift gears to the hot topic, which is partnerships. You've talked about relationships with money. You talked about a relationship with maybe a roommate who didn't make as great decisions as you may have made, and now you get to benefit off the fact that you're going to make a little bit of money. But there's relationships with people when it comes to building wealth as well. And that's where this word partnership comes into play. So why do you think it's so important to talk about money early in a relationship, whether it's romantic or business, but maybe we should start with the romantic relationship?
Absolutely. You know, it's there. If you're going to be open and honest with people through your life, if that's who you are and that's who you want to be, because that's a great kind of life to live, you'll live more successfully, more happy, more flow. I mean, so being open with people. So if that person isn't open to you about how they're, in essence, what it is how they were trained. Because again, we're in the 20s and 30s. It's really, yeah, mom and dad, they should have done better for training me. Or what happens, it's always an interesting question, like, what did your mom and dad teach you about money? And so some people say, oh, it's about saving or scarcity, fear. So those are kinds of things that we have to sort of reprogram, retrain ourselves. And this is where, again, we want allowances. In partnerships, we all get something that we determine is the amount that we both get. And then we have a central account. And in that central account, that's where all the, we'll call it investing, decision-making, success that we want with the goals that we have set out as a partnership. That's the same in a business. We both get salaries, but the profit, we determine what the profit's going to do, how we're going to invest that. Same in our relationships. You know, some relationships you can just have one account and everybody can just, feel that way. But today, people are wanting independence, which is great. So you can have both your own credit cards. But you should be able to talk about, I didn't get to pay off my credit card this month. I overspent.
Right.
That is a partnership. That's openness.
Do you think that the resistance to doing that or the fear to doing that, it does go back to what was modeled for people? And is there kind of a perfect age where we can effectively reprogram that? Because that sounds like something you could carry for the rest of your life as a bad habit, is not talking about money.
Yeah, and unfortunately, not talking about money, because it is central to our lives, impacts divorces. Why divorces have increased and that kind of stuff. It's one of the conversations that we, in all of our work, you and I, we are actually saving relationships every day because we get people to talk about things that really are hard to talk about. So we're coaching them. So again, we would say to the young people, talk to your mom and dad's financial person, because we, in our practice, you in your practice, we talk straight down to the next generation, such that, like we're talking about, kids at 6 and 7 learning about life, decision-making, confidence. And it's central about the money.
Now you have, I think, some pretty clear ideas about when people should form romantic relationships for the not for the purposes of building wealth, but that the two really go hand in hand once you've found that person who is open with you about this plan to build wealth together. I think you have a very specific idea of when that should happen in someone's life. When is that?
Oh, yes. You are now getting into my very direct conversation with 20-year-olds and specifically, and then by 30, man, you're getting this very harsh.
Paul Lermitte Unfiltered. Here we go.
Here it is. In the first 3 months, you're just having this wonderful relationship with this person. That's great, have lots of fun and that kind of stuff. And then if that person, yes, you see further a relationship, she hasn't kicked you out or he hasn't said, okay, we're enough. Hey, then the next 3 months, you have to introduce them to all your friends and family. And then, so that's 6 months. And in the 6 to 9 months, now you're looking for feedback. How do your friends like him or her? What does the parents and the brothers and sisters think, like honestly? And you can't get mad when they say, well, he is such a jerk, he's taking you for a ride, or he's going to be terrible lazy ass. Well, then you better take this serious, because by the 12th month, he or she, you're kicking that person to the curb if they're not the one for the future. You don't need 3 to 5 years. I just had a gal, after 5 years, this guy still didn't actually commit. She wasted 5 years. Well, maybe 4. But life is too important to be not with great partners in business, in life. It is so critical. So you can figure it out in a year to know that you're going into the next year. And that's the beauty of this, is be harsh, be direct, know what you want. Don't waste time.
Do you think that the feedback you're offering or the structure that you're offering is any different for a man than it is for a woman?
Well, I'm a little more direct with the women. I tell them, look, if that guy isn't focused on you, treating you like you are the queen, making sure that you guys are doing things for the future, if you guys haven't talked about family, careers, lifestyle, and the other family members and that kind of stuff, if you guys haven't done that in that first year, and he doesn't want to talk about that, let's even say, then sister, kick his ass to the curb.
Yeah, no kidding. And in those instances where you're talking to either a male or a female, does it change the game or does it change the conversation based on both of them being high earners, or maybe one being a higher earner than the other? How does that enter into this concept of determining partnership? Because that can be a tricky subject sometimes, particularly in this day and age where women are making sometimes more money than men, and that can be like, it just hits the nerve in the wrong spot. You know what I mean?
Well, and this is where, I'm going to say to the ladies that are out there that are making good money, great money, like, you do have to be a little more defining on these gentlemen. And it really is about the friend group and the family group giving you the data about who this person is today and what's their potential of who they're going to be. Because we're all evolving. But is this person going to evolve? And in essence, I'm going to treat you like that it's equal, but no, treat you like you are the queen. Because men have to respect the family, the greater family in that. And they better show up. And so if a gentleman, young man, is condescending, disrespectful, these are things that women need to say, hey, it's all about the future, because you can live together and waste 5 years traveling and doing little things and not really getting ahead. Or you can be actually, in 5 years, have your house paid off, all these kinds of things that are pretty successful, have a family, enjoying life, traveling. So money is an indicator. It's a good conversation.
All right. Now I want to poke around in there a little bit, because it's the definition of partnership you're offering is heteronormative, and that's fine. But it's also suggesting that we have to have a partner in order to build wealth. You must take care, as I do, of many financially independent men and women who don't have a partner in order to build wealth. Does that change the way that we engage with the world? Does it change the way that we look at the building of wealth or the purpose for that wealth?
So I'm going to say no. you can do this on a loan. But I'm going to say, even just the numbers that are out there, you have both partnerships in both women, both men, women and men. Most of us do want to be in relationship. Most of us do. So in my books, that is just, again, focusing on that, if that's important, which it, again, for most people it is. I just had two women at 75 come together. And again, like you said, one very wealthy lady, one not so wealthy. And we had to talk about what the cash flow was going to be like. What was the fixed expenses and what were the variable expenses, the ones that are up and down a bit. And then, hey, here's the travel fund. Who's going to fund the travel fund? Well, she couldn't. She can.
Yeah.
And guess what? They work together.
She wants to. Yeah.
She wants to.
And I think having a you in the picture makes that conversation so much more possible, because we have to put it in the middle of the table and have an objective conversation about it. It's, yes, of course, feelings are going to enter into it a little bit, right?
Always.
But at the end of the day, if they both want to have a great life experience and they're both willing to contribute to that life experience, why wouldn't we leverage the fact that one has more than the other? This brings me to the point about business partnerships I wanted to hit on too, because you said, you're right, like we don't want to be alone. We generally want to build things with other people. The first factor in the 5 factors of flourishing is positive social relationships. So whether you're forming positive social relationships around money on a personal note or on a business note, the fact is we do want to kind of jam with people when it comes to building things, right? So do you have any principles when it relates to the building of positive business relationships around wealth, tips, any principles that you'd offer there?
So again, I'm going to suggest that in business relationships, just like the others, you really have to be open and honest with each other. A lot of times business people want to keep things, their personal life is separate, their business life is together. And those typically don't last because there's not a full interconnection and commitment for one another. So again, what we're talking about and looking for is in partnerships, they're open, honest, transparent. They have a purpose, they have goals. So it is critical that all of that is discussed. Because when people, as you know, in business, and you have partners, I've had partners, they're all different. And that's the good part. It's just like, here's another little stat. 90% of first marriages, relationships, are opposites attract. 90% in divorce, second relationships, 90%, their ideologies and everything are the same.
Align, really.
Yeah. So it's we human beings are very complicated, but in some ways we're very simple.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. And I think that's also true in business relationships. When I look back, I go, you know what? I see that the opposites attract thing probably made sense there. And then, second or third time around, you start to become, you become more aware of yourself and what you need. And so that brings me to the question of, if you had to propose a question or a series of questions, knowing what you know about romantic partnerships around money and business partnerships around money, what's an example of a great question you got to ask yourself, a tough one, before you enter into that partnership with that person? Because I think you get better at it as you go. But in the first few times around when you're entering relationships, you generally don't ask enough questions. What do you got?
So I think this is the best one for everyone, romantic and business, is what is the work ethic of the person? And I'm saying that from a business point of view, like I tell my partners, some of them live it, some of them don't, but I say we work 8 to 8, 6 days a week. Now, when their spouse hears that, because we interview the new partner, his wife actually, or his husband, but I make it very clear. This is what our life is about, is we have that, we're always available. We don't have to be in the office that way, but we're available. When a client calls, there's a need, so we better address it, we better service that. Now, that's work ethic in the business, but in the romantic or our relationship, like I'm going to say for Jan and I knew that this woman was a hard worker. She was a top athlete. She was she was an A student. I was a C plus student. But I did try to work hard, but she worked hard. And then, yeah, she worked in the service industry. She was a hard worker. So, there's that part, work ethic. Check that out with your partnerships.
All right. I got one more question to ask, and it has to do specifically with this age group. So this, again, decisions, dollars and cents. We're going to have Paul back next year to talk about allowances, dollars and cents, which is about talking to your kids about money. So this is going to go deeper into that younger age group, but focusing again on this age 20 to 30 something. If you could leave the listeners with one financial principle that will serve them for decades. They're in this age 20 to 30 right now. What's the financial principle that we want to hang our hat on?
As in business, as in personal, you must watch your cash flow monthly. When I talk to young people and I say, well, what's your visa? Have you looked at your visa? No. You need to look at your visa every month. You need to discern, shit, I should not have gone out as often as I did. Holy Moses. And writing down, oh, that's entertainment. That's coffee. This is a gift. Oh, this is my clothing allowance. Like how many times? Oh my gosh. Okay, so you have to be in business and in personal, you have to be recording and making sure this. There's all kinds of apps that are out there that are helpful. And so you can find those 20s and 30-year-olds, you know them all.
You know what they are.
Go and look at them.
Yeah.
But tracking your money. So looking at your bank statement, looking at your Visa, MasterCard. So important every month. It only takes 5 minutes, people. Come on.
It does. You get good at it. You definitely get good at it. And I love that because it folds into one of my mantras, which is if you know your wealth, you know yourself. If you start to truly know where it is that your resources are going, you start to see what's really important to you. And if they're going to things that are not important to you, you need to strike that off as fast as you can because that is wasted wealth that could be better deployed somewhere else. That's perfect. I have one closing question for you. I ask this of everybody on the podcast, and it has to do with something called the moment of bliss. So if a pet peeve is a very, very small thing that causes a disproportionately large negative emotional reaction, the moment of bliss is a very small thing that causes a disproportionately large, great, wonderful feeling. For you, Paul Lermitte, what is your moment of bliss?
I'm going to have to say that when I actually look at my tax return and see how much I've given away to charities and knowing I got the government to help me in giving to my charities, that is one of my favorite things. So that's why if it just starts with $25 a month and at the end you'll know that your tax return, the government helped pay that, you got a refund. You get some money back.
That's right. Yes.
And you got to give to what you want and what's important to you. So exciting.
Brilliant. That is a fantastic moment of bliss and one that speaks so eloquently to the true life wealth journey of having enough that you can share with others and truly embodying and feeling that yourself. Thank you so much. If this conversation resonated with you, please share it with someone starting their wealth journey and check out Paul's work for even more practical guidance. I'm going to list both titles of the books in the show notes. Paul Lermitte, it was an honor and a pleasure having you on the Flourish Feed podcast, and we'll see you next time.
Always wonderful. Thank you, Jillian. You're doing amazing work here for community and the world. Thank you.
Thank you.